So look, I think that finding liquidity in a market is an essential part of the ecosystem. Generating liquidity and moving cash is sort of the oxygen in the system that allows everything to continue to live. And so secondaries, if I go back in time, when we did our fund level secondary to set up Lightbox in 2012, we started the process. There wasn't a lot of fund level secondaries being done in the market globally for venture. That's since evolved. And I think now you see fund level secondaries happening and dedicated firms around that. What we're looking at here in terms of new investors coming in and replacing old investors is a logical thing that's existed throughout. And I think that it's great. It's a good thing. It's a healthy thing. It allows for everybody to play the role that they wanted and new investors to carry forward on the journey from this point forward. So I think whether it's us and what we did at Rebel and bringing in investors like Temasek and KKR and gave Rebel as a company the opportunity to benefit from their expertise and their knowledge while allowing us to take some liquidity and continue to ride the journey forward with them from there. Or today's Zepto situation. The motivations can vary for why people do it, but I think the idea is a good one and it's one that's a healthy thing in the ecosystem, especially in light of the fact that the public market liquidity is always it's unpredictable as to when it can happen. And therefore, those windows are limited. You may not be ready at the right point. There may be other reasons. So this allows for the system to continue to function while those opportunities for, I guess, liquidity through a public offering ultimately take place. I think it varies company by company, but I think if I were to look at Zepto's case specifically, my sense is as they want to get into holding more inventory and perhaps selling their own branded products, being able to do so as an Indian company is much more beneficial. So you don't have to, there are rules against multi-brand retailing by foreign-owned entities. And so this gives them that freedom to kind of expand their business model the way they want to, and perhaps just continue to grow in the direction they need to. So I think it's less about playing to the public market's needs, more about thinking about what the company structure is required to be to do the business that they want to continue to grow into. So that's what I think this one is. Otherwise, quite honestly, whether it's a domestic fund or a foreign fund, they're all able to access and invest in companies in India, and I think they all bring their respective benefits and value to the companies. So I think it's less about a particular shareholder, more about structurally allowing them to move their business in a certain direction. Look, I think that there are investors that want to play a journey at different points in time. And so the IPO and the backdrop of IPOs being shelved or taking some time to go public and all of that is an ongoing thing that will exist at all times. The market is not predictable. You don't know when you'll be able to get out. You don't know what the appetite will be. You don't know what the macro geopolitical factors might be. But I think that secondaries have always been there as an opportunity for some investors who've said, now this company has matured to a certain point. We want to carry it forward. And we want to be a part of that journey from here till whenever the next financing is. And an IPO is just a financing activity. It's not the end of the business. It's simply now another journey that the entrepreneur needs to go on and that the investors who are in the business will continue on or not. And so I don't necessarily see the increase in secondaries as either a knock on the idea that IPOs are not happening and therefore this is the only option that people have, nor is it a temporary thing. It'll be a sustained activity that should continue for a long time because this is a reality. You have investors who come at different stages and therefore there will always be an appetite for a good company, for someone to come in. And oftentimes if that means the company stays private longer, so be it. Maybe that's better for the business. Yeah, I think when secondaries started, and I think when we started to talk and think more about it, there probably was a concern that if it's a secondary transaction, that means the company has not matured to the level where it can go public, and therefore it's not really lived up to its business expectations. But I think that that's changed, and I think among LPs, among the market in general, people understand that going public brings with it its own set of obligations and overhead and a different way of living and operating. And that may or may not be the best answer for every business at that time. So therefore, I think LPs will also look at this now and say, okay, look, secondaries are reasonable. It's a credible path of exit. It exists as an opportunity. Look, quite honestly, as far as everyone's concerned, they would just simply like their liquidity at the time frame they'd like it. So if a secondary delivers it, so be it. The secondary delivers it. And if that secondary opportunity set continues to exist and consistently exists, then I think LPs will also believe that, okay, this is not a one-off. This is a viable channel of exit. So when we make an investment in a company, you will say, I can either exit this opportunity by the company going public, some other strategic player coming and buying the business, or somebody buying my stake out. Now, this last one has become a much more real option that we've seen happen in multiple places, as you mentioned earlier. And so therefore, I think LPs will say, okay, I can see that. Like if you build a big business, I can see now why a Motilal or a KKR or a Temasek or somebody else will be interested because they will see the value of that journey going forward. So you can build to that outcome now. And I think that that's a healthy thing. Yeah, so I think as I think about the Rebel journey, what the company did a great job of over a 6 to 7 quarter period was consistently improving the business metrics. So they went from a company that probably had too much overhead, too much burn, to one that was operating in a leaner manner with growth that was phenomenal, and that they'd managed to achieve all of that um, in a structure that showed that they could do it efficiently and sustainably for the long run. Now they're nearly profitable, and so then that was also a great testament to the idea that the business model can work. And we've often talked about the fact that unless you're profitable as a business, you're not really a business. You're just a good idea. And I think that being a business requires getting to that profitability, and Rebel's ability to demonstrate that they understood how to do that and how to take the business there was really valuable. Then I think knowing and seeing that, finding investors who have a long-term view on the market, have the resources to be able to support the business, both as its last few public investors, as well private investors, as well as perhaps the first few public investors, and hold on to that stock in the public market as well, really gave the opportunity to bring someone new into the fold who was going to support and be helpful that way. So I think our learning was that, look, if you can create the right type of business, and this is probably just more fundamental to anything, build a business that is doing the right set of things and creating value, you will attract investors. That's what we showed there. That's what happened there. And I think that set Rebel up really well for whenever it decides to go public. And therefore, the pressure gets reduced a little bit because early investors have taken some liquidity off. Therefore, they're not as worried. You've got new people in the business. So all of that kind of played well to it. So I think for us as a takeaway, more actively looking for opportunities like this with investors like that will be important, and making sure more basically that our businesses are worthy of finding investors like that is what's really the need of the hour. Yeah, quick commerce is a tough one. I think that the proposition holds some value clearly in certain market segments. So what we've seen and how we've seen it operate in the larger cities seems to indicate that there's a willingness for people to pay for that convenience, or at least have that convenience. Um, I think as you expand out to other markets, whether that same propensity to pay exists or not is a question, and whether or not that convenience is as high is a question as well. Someplace like Bombay, where traveling 2 kilometers can take you half an hour, versus a smaller city where you can move around much more easily, may not carry the same value. So therefore, I think that's one big question mark as to how does this get big over time, and does the value proposition need to keep evolving and changing to address customer needs in different market segments? The second is really, with greater competition, how do you really differentiate? And what is the loyalty? Like today you might buy from Zepto, tomorrow you might buy from Blinkit, next day you might buy from Instamart. And so I think platforms that have the ability to distribute their customer acquisition costs across multiple products might have a better chance. So Zomato with the food delivery, or Swiggy with food delivery and quick commerce seems well positioned, which is why also I imagine Zepto gets into Zepto Cafe and other product categories as well. Because if I'm spending this money to acquire the customer, I want to retain them for as much as I can and have them use the app as regularly as possible. Um, but all that being said, I think it's a challenging journey. We've seen that even e-commerce has had a hard time making money so far. Well, it's not clear that any e-commerce platform does make money from pure e-commerce. So how will these guys show that in quick commerce is yet to be seen.